So one of the impacts of COVID is that we've all been locked away for a while, but it's also now become very repetitive, and there's a weariness that you see growing amongst people, whether they're fed up of the situation or it's the struggle of just being in the same place all the time, or a lack of variety in their interactions.
Yeah.
That's creating a little bit of inertia, you could argue, or a flatness.
Yeah.
What can teams do to try and tackle that inertia?
Well, that's a great question. I think there are a number of things, and I'm certainly seeing that. I'm seeing that teams are reporting a drop in energy levels, a depletion almost. There are a number of things. One thing I would really think about is, how do you get team spirit back? So what happens is, if a team everyone's gone online, and everyone's reporting in through Zoom, the team tends to actually keep what we call task cohesion pretty well. Mm-hmm. So you still has a good focus on task, good efficiency and effectiveness on dealing with particular points and prioritizing. This is what we need to do. How are we going to get it done? It's done. What actions are we going to take? Gone. And meetings become very procedural like that. But what we're missing is what we call social cohesion. And through social cohesion, you build the bonds between people. You get that camaraderie, because actually, in physical terms, when you're together, you've got oxytocin bouncing around, the hugging hormone, and you're not necessarily hugging, but you do feel a sense of belonging and part of a team. And what we lose when we're stuck in different houses, or some of us in the office, some of us are out, we lose that sense of belonging. So trying to find ways to not just be focused on the task the whole time is good. Now, in the early days of COVID, we did that by quizzes and exercise sessions, or virtual coffee afternoons and tea and cake, or virtual cocktail hours. And then people got a bit bored. And I think part of the issue with Zoom or Teams or anything in a virtual world is it's a two-dimensional world. So, my first advice would be, if it's at all possible, get the team together. Even if you're doing it outside, going for a walk in a nice woodland, get the team back together, in a socially distanced and safe way. If it has to be outside, fine. But I think that's really important, because the interesting thing with teams is we've gone a lot from face to face to virtual, and now we've gone to this hybrid model, and I think we're probably going back to virtual. So is there a way of getting teams together face to face? And I think there would be a difference there. Secondly, do you have to have all your interactions on a webinar? Maybe it's time to go back to old school phone, and if not, smoke signals and semaphore, but certainly old school phone. Do you have to get together as a team the whole time, actually? Or could you change the dynamic? Is it a time for more one-to-one meetings? Is it time for sub-teams? Is it just, maybe you can ask the team to come up with ideas. I think, part of the problem with leadership is we think we have to solve the problems of the team. The team's gone flat. How am I going to solve the problem the team's gone flat? Well, I'd be interested in saying to the team, I sense the team has gone flat. What do you think? Yes, it has. Okay. I am kind of interested in the reasons for that, but I'm more interested in the reasons of how do we kind of get our mojo back. So I would throw it open. What do you reckon, guys? How do we get the mojo back? What do you think is going to work for us as a team? Because it might be different with whatever team we're working with.
No, I 100% agree. And I think it's quite interesting if you think about the impact of COVID to some extent, in a corporate setting anyway. It's actually given people a lot more responsibility, a responsibility to manage yourself that in some environments probably didn't exist before. But you could argue, therefore, there becomes with that a responsibility to actually be able to manage your energy that you're contributing to your team. But I don't think people have necessarily consciously always done that. So somehow we've got to educate people that you now have a responsibility to be able to turn up. And like you say with the telephone piece, it's quite interesting how people are relieved when you phone them. They don't want this through a screen all the time. I think that has to become now part of the norm, that we're going to go back to the old thing, the telephone.
Yeah, and I think that there's another thing here, is you might want to actually remind people why they like working with the other people in the team, because they might have forgotten that, because they're not seeing them. You haven't got the cooler conversations, you haven't got the elevator conversations, you're not sharing a car to go and see a client. So what is it I actually, I'm assuming that you do like working with the people in your team, and that often is the case, it's allowed. what is it, and then, so you could do some wacky stuff, you could, and this will work in some cases and not in others, so, kind of take that with a health warning, but you could ask people to appear on a Zoom with a particular object they like, what is it, what is it about that object that I thought I'd share with you today, or maybe I'm going to bring an object that represents this reminds me of our team and this is why, something like that just, again, changes. It's not just about we've got a load of stuff to do and we've got to get it done, but let's just take some time out and think about how we interact. Or maybe it's two truths and a lie, or maybe it's, look, I'd like you to share 3 things about you. I'd like you to share 3 things about you that inform the philosophy you have on life, on leadership, And then what happens is people start being able to understand what makes people tick, why they are the way they are, why they have the values they have, and you're starting to reconnect as human beings. And also, if you've got new people on the team, particularly new people who have been onboarded during COVID, they're getting a chance to really see people for people, not just see people for the roles they have in organizations.
Yeah, and I'd say kudos to Ascend. One of the brilliant things we did together was actually by you guys asking intelligent questions of some of our team and then sharing that information. It just creates more personal connection. And actually, you're just opening up another level of honesty, and you could feel the energy levels that came out of that, and they persist. It has long-term impact just by that single event. Maybe we're all welcoming ourselves back to the days of this sort of Zoom events where we're sharing odd things with each other again. Perhaps we need to get back to where we were back in March to some extent.
Well, yeah, maybe. I think certainly changing the dynamic of the conversations, and changing the rhythm. I mean, we've gone from suddenly being thrown out of rhythm, in March and April, and then having to readjust, and we've readjusted and got into a new rhythm, and maybe we've just kind of got used to that cycle.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to change the drumbeat to something different.
Bill, thank you. Thank you for the time you spent with our team. I'm sure we'll do more together, but thank you also for today. Great to hear your thoughts.
Thanks, Andy. Always a pleasure to work with Miramar.